Starting Tech News Weekly in 3, 2, 1.
Hey everybody, welcome to Tech News Weekly. I'm Andrew Zarian. Of course, I'm joined by John Bubb, as I meet each and every week. How you doing, John?
Hey, Andrew, what's up?
Nothing much. The summer's over. We're done.
The weather definitely says so.
The summer's finished. You know what's a good indication of the summer being over? The Apple announcement.
Apple announcements.
Yeah. That's a perfect indication that it's time to kind of go into the holiday season. And it's scary because, you know, it sneaks up on you.
Does it really, though?
I don't know. I mean, honestly, it
happens the same time every year.
Yeah, but nobody's ready. You know what I mean? Like, I think what happens with a lot of people is that they get very excited that the announcement's going to happen. Then the announcement happens, and it's very disappointing all the time because it's never what you wanted. And then you're like, oh, crap, I got to buy this thing.
Yeah, more so this year than most, I think, in a way, because I don't know. It's hard and disappointing because you will never get a true Apple keynote ever again.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about in the fact that it's everything that you wanted it to be.
That and just because you just don't have Steve Jobs up there. Without Steve Jobs there running things and putting his little Apple touch on it, it's not true Apple. I mean, yes, Tim Cook does a great job of heading up Apple, but there's just no replacing Steve Jobs. No man can replace Steve Jobs.
So I guess we'll go right into it because there was an Apple event this week for people sleeping under a rock, I should say. The iPhone 6 and the iPhone 6 Plus were announced. A 4.7-inch model and a 5.5-inch model were announced. The 5.5-inch model has a 1080p Retina display. The 4.7 does not. It's an OIS camera, and it has something called one-handed mode. Power button is moved to the side rather than the top. It's as thin as the iPod Touch, and if anybody here has ever used an iPod Touch, they are insanely thin, especially the latest generation one, the last one that they put out. It is super, super thin.
It's almost scary how thin it is.
I think overall the design is stunning. It's a great looking phone. There's nothing you could say about the phone. It's going to support Wi-Fi calling with VoLTE.
Voice over LTE.
Yeah, voice over LTE, which is a higher. It has higher bandwidth, and it's a different codec. I think it's G.722 that it's using. It's not going to be Skype quality.
This is fascinating, though, because this, and it also supports Wi-Fi calling, but there's caveats to both of these in the sense that not every carrier supports this, or they are going to support it, but they're not supporting it currently. And it might not be until the end of 2015 before they support either voice over LTE or Wi-Fi calling.
Yeah, so I got an update on my phone today, and it's a pre-update for the update that's going to enable voice over LTE.
Pre-update?
Yeah, it's a pre-update. And because
that terminology just gets me.
So that's what they call it. They call it a pre-update.
Pre-update.
So it's an update to prepare you for the real update. And it screwed up my LG G2, actually. I was in an endless boot. I couldn't get into the OS, so I had to remove it, and then I had to put in a command and terminal on this phone to kind of bring back the phone because my phone is rooted, and it doesn't like rooted phones. So I didn't think it was going to break it. It broke it, but that's my fault. So a lot of the carriers are starting to prep their phones for voice over LTE. I'm curious on how this is going to work exactly and how intelligent it's going to be and if people are going to be able to notice the difference. Sprint is rolling it out.
You also have to be talking to somebody else that is in a supported area and has a supported device. There's so many things that have to come together for this to work. You have to be in a voice LTE enabled area, and you also have to have a voice over LTE enabled device.
So we essentially,
both people do.
If you're on an iPhone 6 and I'm on an iPhone 6 and you're at home connected to Wi-Fi and I'm at home connected to Wi-Fi, we could do this.
No.
If you're on the same carrier.
I don't know if it works with Wi-Fi or not.
No, it does. Yeah. It's Wi-Fi.
Wi-Fi calling, yes,
Wi-Fi
but
calling,
I don't know if that uses the G.722 higher quality codec or not.
I believe it should. That's actually interesting.
There's so many variables in the sense that both parties have to have a voice over LTE enabled device, and they also have to be in the voice over LTE covered area.
Yeah.
Not every area that has LTE is voice over LTE enabled.
Yes, it's not.
Verizon is going to be the only carrier that has voice over LTE in every single area that it has LTE.
Yeah.
Which is great, because I think that's really confusing to be in an LTE coverage area and there's no voice over LTE support.
But I'm wondering, when I said that about the Wi-Fi calling, I was talking about the codec, not the voice over LTE. If you're doing Wi-Fi calling, is it going to use the higher bitrate call?
I have no idea.
I would like to know that.
And even with Wi-Fi calling, we're not going to see that really until the end of 2015.
Yeah, so it's going to take some time. Also, price changes and boost in space. So you're talking the 4.7-inch model starting at $199, 16 gig. 5.5-inch model starting at 16 gig at $299, which was kind of expected. What was unexpected is that they killed the 32 gig model, and now they're offering a 64 gig, and the 64 gig model is now updated to 128 gig. Why? I know why they did this, because they want people to buy the 64 gig, but it's kind of crummy that the 16 gig model did not get the boost to 32. That's kind of crummy. Because 16 gigs goes really quickly. If you got, my wife, for example, she has like 3,000 photos on her phone.
Yeah. And
they take up space, obviously. You take a couple videos, you take a couple photos, there you go. Now you've maxed out. And, applications now, FIFA, for example, if you're going to install FIFA Soccer, it's about 2 gigs. That's a lot of space. So, I would get, you have a 32 gig or 16 gig right now for your iPhone?
I have 32 gigs and I've got about 12 gigabytes free, which I could if I was going to get an iPhone 6, I could still technically get away with 32 gigabytes. And I'm almost sad that they don't offer 32 gigabytes still, because 16 gigabytes, in all honesty, that is just way too small. They should have just dropped 16 gigs altogether and started right at 32.
Yeah, if this was a couple years ago.
How quickly, people don't understand just how quickly 16 gigabytes will actually go, because you're already using at least 4 or 5 gigabytes for the operating system, and then you're only left with maybe 9 gigs free.
Oh yeah, and that's nothing. Honestly, I have a 16 gig iPad. I would never buy that again.
Yeah,
I would never get a 16 gig iPad.
32 gigabyte works out to be about 28 gigabytes in real life. So I've got 12 free, so that means I'm using what, 24 gigabytes of stuff on my phone right now. That's a lot.
So my Android phone is 32 gigs and my OnePlus One
not to mention
64.
that Apple does not have expansion slots. So it's not like you can just buy a micro SD and put it in there.
Yeah. Pre-orders went on sale early this morning, and they are about 4 weeks behind now, shipping in 4 weeks.
Said it was their best pre-sales ever. They smashed their records.
Are you surprised?
Unfortunately, it also cost them their website as well.
But are you surprised by that?
No, not really.
If I go there right now, let's see. If I'm going to go and order this.
I think what this shows everybody is that, while everybody did want a bigger screen, and Apple kind of gave everybody a bigger screen with the iPhone 5 and the 4-inch model, that really wasn't the size that people were really wanting in a bigger screen. They didn't want to go from 3.5 inch to 4. They wanted something like at least 4.5 inches big. And Apple has finally, 2 years later, delivered on those genuinely truer, bigger screen sizes.
So if I were to get, so they have the silver the space gray, and the gold for the colors. Let's go with the gold. Well, which one is their top selling? I'm curious because I want to see what their ship date is for this. So I'm on Verizon. I'm going to pick a 64 gig model.
Gray, I think.
7. Okay, available shipping in 7. It's 7 to 10 business days for the shipping for the $299. The $199 delivery. Oh wow, actually they're all available. Available to ship, delivered by 9/19.
I heard everything. Well, that might be just verbiage on their website, and it's not actual ship date.
No, it's different on everything that I click on. So that is the 4.7-inch model. Let's see what it is for the 5.5. I would actually be surprised if the 5.5 is the one that's selling. Yeah, 3 to 4 weeks for the 5.5. Wow, so people are opting in for the bigger phone. I'm really surprised by this. And I said something interesting on What the Tech, and it really caught people. And I was having a really fascinating discussion online over this. In my opinion, and I don't mean it in a sexist way at all, but I'm going based on personal experience with the women around me, my family members. Generally, if I were to generalize what they have told me, none of them want the 5.5-inch model. They all think that the iPhone is a good size, and the 4.7 is even pushing it.
Oh.
Now, granted, they've never used a bigger phone, so that's probably why they feel this way. If they go to the 4.7, I guarantee you within a week, they're going to be perfectly comfortable with it.
Yeah.
I said the same thing about a 5.5-inch phone. I thought it was way too big until I got this. I mean, even when I had the Galaxy Note 2, remember I had that for like a year? They sent it to me to use long term.
Yeah.
When I used that phone, it felt too big to me. I mean, it really did throughout the entire process because it wasn't like my everyday driver. This is my everyday phone now, and it's a perfect size. My 5.1-inch, this is 5.1, feels too small to me. So obviously, if they're using it, it's going to, they're going to get used to it. But I was really surprised by how many people I spoke to on Twitter that were saying, no, my wife's getting the bigger phone. My wife's getting the bigger phone. My girlfriend is getting the bigger phone. So, one, I'm curious if they came from Android because I think it's an easier transition for someone that had Android with a bigger phone to go to a 5.5-inch, iPhone. Two, I'm just fascinated. I would like to see the numbers, like statistics, when this thing is out in the public. If they're going to do like a demographic on who's buying what.
But you're also talking about Apple, and Apple doesn't really like to give information like that.
No, they don't. But I mean, it's an interesting thing I would like to see. The other thing that I'm really curious about, and Apple will give this information, how many people left Android to go back to Apple?
That is a good question.
That's going to be the big story here. Not the sale number, right? Like, we know this thing is going to, blow it out of the water as far as the sale goes.
Yeah.
The question is, how many people either went back to Apple, so they're customers that have gone back. At one point, they had the iPhone. I know plenty of people that had an iPhone. They left. They went to Android because they kind of got bored with the iPhone. And now they're going to go back. Or two, how many people never had an iPhone before and now they're buying an iPhone? Because I'll tell you something. I've been one of these people that has never owned an iPhone. I don't own an iPhone. The reason for that is, one, the screen size is too small. Two, I'm already in the iOS experience and I need to kind of use everything. So I have an iPad, I use the iPad regularly, and I have an Android phone. But are people now going to be more inclined to go to the iPhone, go to iOS because it's a big phone? John,
yeah.
I have a feeling now, and tell me if I'm wrong here, because you got the iPhone. This is your first iPhone. You've never had an Android phone. You've had Android devices.
Yes.
If Apple did not update the screen size, let's say, on your next phone, would you consider going Android?
Absolutely.
Because this is too small for you.
Yeah. I'm at the point now where I don't own a tablet. So this is kind of my main mobile device. So I would love to have a bigger screen. And if Apple didn't have a bigger screen, I would definitely look at Android and consider Android.
The other
for
thing,
my next phone.
Yeah, I mean, this is a beautiful phone. I'm even tempted, and I was actually considering going to the iPhone 5 because listen, people accuse me of hating Android. I like Android for what it is, but there are a lot of things that I hate about Android. The fact that Google Hangouts crashes on me, the fact that every time I send a text message, if I send an MMS, it'll
Google
crash.
Hangouts, period, by the way.
But it's on their own platform. My SMS application should not crash when I'm trying to send a picture. My contacts list should not crash. My dialer should not crash. If Facebook crashes, I understand that's out of their hands. But this has been the core problem for Android. They've gotten a lot better, obviously. And they're getting better, and the next version of Android is going to be even better, I'm positive.
But I still don't think that I'm not 100% convinced that they necessarily have the polish that Apple has. And it's been, 5 years now?
It's been a while. Yeah, it's been some time. So I would love to see how many people are jumping ship. And we'll find out next week, next Friday, September 17th. Actually, September 17th, the iOS 8 launches. September 18th, the iPhone comes out. Can
we talk about how fast they went through the iPhone 6?
I mean, they flew right by it.
They just went boom, 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 boom. Okay, let's talk about something else.
Yeah.
Why? I wanted them to spend a little bit more time discussing the differences and stuff because, for example, they barely mentioned it. They barely mentioned iOS 8 at all. So we don't really know. In previous keynotes, when they introduced the iPhone 5S, they spent a little bit more time talking about the differences between the iPhone 5 and the 5S. iPhone 6, there was no mention of anything else. There was no mention of, how it relates to iOS 8, what they did specifically hardware-wise with iOS 8.
Did they talk about battery life?
That.
I have a question. Did they discuss battery life on it?
They might have mentioned it very briefly.
I mean, normally,
they
you remember,
just went through it so fast.
Normally, Apple likes to gloat about their battery life, even though the battery life is garbage on the iPhone 5.
They even barely mentioned how this one-handed mode thing works.
Yeah. So
they spent like 10 seconds on that, and that was it. And then they also have the difference between optical. They really didn't say this, but the optical image stabilization for the camera is only available on the iPhone 6 Plus.
Yeah, OIS is phenomenal. I mean, it's really good. Unfortunately,
I'm not sure a lot of people
phone.
are going to understand the difference that it's only available on the iPhone 6 Plus.
Yeah.
Not to mention that it's very interesting the way that they handled the issues in the very beginning of the live stream. For a tech company that does this, multiple times a year, they had a number of issues with their live stream. And I was surprised they did not delay whatsoever for these issues.
Yeah, it was a nightmare. It was a technical nightmare.
We both started on the air at 1 o'clock, and they were very much on time. And even though they were having issues with their feed, they didn't wait whatsoever for their feed to get fixed.
No, at all. They just, I mean, here's the thing. It was the feed. It was a disaster, and it really gives me agita every time I do the show. For people outside of the tri-state area that don't know what agita is, it means heartburn, but it also means aggravation. I said that to someone. They're like, what is that word you're using? What is that word? The other thing that I was very surprised about, and this is, we're going to get to the watch, guys, I promise, because I have a lot to say about this.
Else.
Oh, boy, do I have a lot to say about this thing. Something that I was very surprised about is that they did not mention Yosemite at all.
No.
Very surprising. Because the integration between Yosemite and iOS 8 and Yosemite, there's a lot of integration there. There's a lot of working together. And I had predicted it would be a similar release, the same week or a couple days after you would have.
I'm not wondering if they're having some issues.
Well, I'll tell you, they are having issues because I'm running Yosemite right now. I'm on the public preview for Yosemite on my MacBook Pro. And I've run Apple betas before in the past. I've run Windows betas in the past. This is the most unstable version of an Apple beta I've ever ran. I mean, it's really unstable. Obviously, it's a beta. It's going to be unstable. Things aren't going to be working well. I get that, and I'm taking that risk. I'm just saying for the progression of this, considering it should be out soon.
Mm-hmm.
It should be. It
should be, but they also reported that they're not actually going to have SMS continuity until October. So even when the iPhone launches, you're going to have to wait until October before you have SMS continuity where you can actually reply and send text messages from Yosemite.
I mean, but it's not streamlined. I feel like it's a little fragmented with the release cycles now. 2015 for this. We don't really have a date for this. It's coming soon. It's coming first quarter. The Photos application, Curtis B in our chat room brought up. There's a photo app. They're replacing the iLife suite, obviously, because that thing hasn't been touched since 2011. But the photo suite for Yosemite will not be available until the beginning of 2015.
Yeah, that's strange.
So you're releasing the operating system, which the photo application is a major feature of this thing, and it's not prepared. You're not going to get it. It's a little, I don't know what to make of that. I don't know what to take from this. I don't know if this is a new Apple. I don't know if this is a positive or a negative where they're taking their time to release things rather than pushing it.
It very much seems like the Apple that we knew under Steve Jobs is definitely gone. I mean, that's just it. There's no more of the Steve Jobs era Apple anymore.
I mean,
that was kind of
not
basically
a bad thing.
A honeymoon.
And by the way, that's not an awful thing. Let's just say that.
Right.
We're not saying that that's bad because obviously Apple is far more open as a company. And this keynote, this announcement, in my opinion, was the first sign that we got where Tim Cook is fully in charge. These are his projects.
Sure.
These are his announcements. This is his Apple. Because in the past, they've kind of done things a certain way. Now we're seeing, a keyboard application, the fact that you could install SwiftKey on the new iPhone.
That's not all bad either, by the way.
Is unbelievable to me. The fact that you could put your own keyboard application, the fact that you're going to be able to, they've opened up the API.
I don't think we're knocking necessarily some of the features that we're seeing. I think we're more or less knocking or noticing the execution of these new features. The implementation of these things.
Yeah, listen, it's not bad. I'm excited to see where they go because we're seeing a lot of change at Apple. So the big story here, we got the one more thing. We haven't gotten a one more thing in a long time. We got the one more thing.
I was very disappointed by the way they handled this one more thing.
Your face, I'm going to give you an example, okay? Who's the girl, the Olympian, that did the pissed off face when she got silver?
Okay, don't ask me.
Kate,
I don't watch
Kylie,
that stuff.
whatever. She just had her nudes leaked from that from the leak thing that happened last week. So she's a gymnast and she's getting the silver medal and she's making this face. She took a picture with Obama. She went to the White House. They did the photo. So your face was priceless throughout this entire iWatch announcement.
Somebody told me to fix my face.
You were so annoyed. I'm going to pull up the iWatch for people who have not seen it. The iWatch was announced, and I have to tell you...
Yeah, they're calling it the Apple Watch, by the way.
Apple Watch.
It's not the iWatch.
The Apple Watch. It's interesting that they've dropped the I, and it makes sense because it's nothing like iOS.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's probably running iOS in the back end, but it's not an I device, I guess.
The way they unveiled this was just so... look, I think everybody was excited about it. Oh, yeah, one more thing. That was great. Finally, we're going to get this one more thing moment that we've been waiting Tim Cook to do for the past 3 years. And all he had to do was one simple thing. Uncuff his shirt and roll up his sleeve to unveil this watch. Instead, he says, one more thing, take a look at this.
So the Apple Watch will be available early 2015, so probably first quarter or 2015 or even second quarter. We don't know yet because they did not announce a date. Nobody has a clue. It's going to come in 2 screen sizes. It's going to have an aluminum, stainless, and an 18-karat gold model. Base model begins at $349. Interchangeable bands, which is going to be the big selling point of this thing. You're going to be able to get 5,000 different bands. Digital crown is used to help navigate. Now, the digital crown is a thing on the side on a watch.
I really want to get your opinion on this digital crown thing.
So I'll get to that.
So I still don't understand it.
It requires an iPhone to use it. The battery lasts about a day, which they're hoping to improve. And it's going to support third-party. By the way, this is my favorite one out of all of them, this version, which you saw right there. The 18-karat gold version is my favorite version of this. So,
of course it is.
Yeah, of course. So I'm a watch guy, okay? So before I say this thing is expensive to begin at $349, I'm going to tell you that I'm a watch collector. And on the feed, people started screaming when I said, $349 is a little pricey for this device since it's a companion device. Really, you're going to pay $349 plus you're going to buy the band. So at the end of the day, this thing is going to cost you about $400 or $500.
Yeah. By the way, they didn't mention any pricing other than $349.
Yeah.
And so we don't really know exactly what that $349 applies to. Is it just the actual little device itself? Do you have to pay extra for the band? So
Yes.
Does it come with a band
No.
initially with that $349? Or do you have to do that?
I believe it's going to come with a standard band. So that's what I'm guessing. So actually, this is my favorite version of it, the 18-karat gold one. If I were to say I like one, that's the one that I like. Now, $349 plus the band. If you want an 18-karat gold one, I guarantee that thing's not going to be cheap. It's not going to be a cheap watch. You're getting a day charge out of this. As a guy that collects watches, I would not pay $349 for this. And before people say, well, you're just being cheap. I own a Rolex. I buy expensive, stupid watches because I like watches.
Aren't you rich?
What?
Ooh, aren't you rich?
Yeah, very rich. I'm gonna pawn it one day.
Look at you flaunting your money.
If we don't get our ad money, I'm gonna have to pawn it to pay you. So
yeah,
it's not the pricing that's bothering me. It's the lack of innovation of this device.
The value.
And let me just say, when I say lack of innovation, they are doing the same exact thing that Samsung is doing, that HTC is doing, that Motorola is doing. There's nothing different as far as what Apple is doing. And it's not because they can't do it, or they don't want to do it, I should say. It's because the materials do not exist to create that watch that we have created in our heads. Everybody over the last 2 years has created this amazing magic watch that's, it's curved, it's glass, the thing has underbody lights like it's a Honda Civic from the 90s. We all envisioned this future device. The reality is we are not there technologically. We don't have the materials to have a curved glass that's affordable for most people. So if Samsung cannot do it, why do people think Apple can?
Because Apple has been able to pull off these amazing moments.
Sure.
Nobody, when the iPhone debuted in 2007, nobody thought this thing was going to end up working out and being the success that it is today. When the iPad came out, nobody thought that was going to be the success that it is. When the iPod came out, nobody thought it was going to be the success that it is today. They have a history of launching some incredible products.
Sure, but I mean, was it? But the materials existed when the iPhone came out. Screens existed that were that big. It just nobody was putting it on a phone. The thing that sold the iPhone was not the shape of it. It was the operating system. It was the innovation behind the software that sold it.
Yeah, and it was touched.
It was touched.
It was one of the first, if not the first, touchscreen phones out there.
Now, when you talk about innovation, I would say the impact that the iPhone had on the smartphone market was based on its software and its ecosystem. That's what really sold it. But when you talk about laptops, the MacBook Air really innovated this Ultrabook revolution and these thinner laptops to be put on the market because they were the first to do that. You couldn't make these things thinner because the technology, the chipsets were a lot bigger, the materials that they were using, and it kind of changed the industry to kind of go thinner quickly. With this watch, we have seen every single cell phone manufacturer put out a watch, and none of it has that space-like curved glass. Apple cannot do it right now. They put out a safe watch. They put out something that they know is going to work the way that they want it to work.
Something to get them into the market.
It's not ugly. Like, this is not an ugly device, in my opinion. I don't think it's hideous. I really don't.
You know, I think the renderings make it look crappier than it is. Which I know is unusual to say. Normally, renderings make everything look way cooler than they really are. But I saw some photographs of this, and I was more impressed by the way it looks in photographs than it does in renderings.
So here, wow, look at this. Wow, you could have different type of faces. You could have the colors change. You could have solar.
I just thought that even their demo of it was just really odd.
Yeah, like when they had Mickey Mouse.
If I could say that.
Like they had a Mickey Mouse version.
They did a lot of things that just seemed very gimmicky and novel at best. I mean, the whole fact that they brought up animated emojis.
Yeah, that was a big part. You could talk in emojis, guys.
Because I loved sending those things back in the 1990s. That was just amazing when we had animated emojis for the first time in the 1990s.
And listen,
I can pick out an emoji and send it to you, Andrew. I'm going to send you this animated emoji with hearts for eyes.
And listen, before I get the email saying, you guys are so negative on Apple. When your demo consists of you and your friend having like a secret sign language on this thing to mean breakfast and let's get lunch, and then you draw a fish, that means you really don't have a lot to demo. That's the bottom line.
It was very novel.
This is a first-gen device. Let's see what happens with the second gen. Let's see what happens with the third, the fourth. It's going to improve, and they needed to put something out here. But the fact that it's $349, you're not really getting a lot. You can't use it with any other device. I don't necessarily think this is a phenomenal device. Now, with that said, they're going to sell a buttload of this. Why? They have no competition. There's no other smartwatch that you could buy mainstream. I'm sure there's something that somebody's making. Mainstream smartwatch that you could buy and then use it on an iOS device. So, really, they're the only game in town. So, if you have an iPhone, Christmas is coming. You know what? You're going to spend the $349.
I wouldn't necessarily say that they're the only game in town. There are people that make other, like fitness bands and whatnot that you can. There are other wearables that you can get that work with the iPhone.
Yes, but not a watch. Not this.
Not a watch. No.
Not a. And the Pebble's a piece of junk. Forget about the Pebble. Nobody wants to look at a black and white screen. It's awful. The other announcement was Apple Pay, which is essentially just NFC. You could pay.
By the way, this is something that, everything that we've heard rumored for the past, 8 months is exactly what they said at their keynote. Every single thing from just everything they said was just absolutely spot on in terms of rumors. There was absolutely zero surprise, other than the fact that they actually debuted an Apple Watch. Yeah. I mean, yes, it's been rumored, but nobody knew for sure whether or not they were actually going to debut it.
Yeah. I have nothing bad to say about this. NFC is great if you're going to use it. Most people I don't think are going to use this. 90% of the people that have it don't even know what it is. So, they're doing what it was expected. Now,
this comes down to whether enough places that you go to support it or not. And they're talking about, McDonald's, Bloomingdale's, Macy's, those sort of places. And these are all very national corporations that can afford to, easily put this in every single one of their stores. So I'm not convinced yet that this is something that a lot of people are going to use.
I mean, do a lot of people... Well, the question is, do a lot of people use NFC?
No.
I mean, I've never used it, and I have NFC devices. I mean, it's just easier for me to take out my credit card and use it rather than swinging my phone around.
Yeah.
I mean, it's bottom line.
It's got some cool features, though, in it, in the fact that they mentioned that if your phone gets stolen or a credit card gets stolen, you can easily deactivate and remove those cards from your device remotely through iCloud.
Yeah. Which is pretty cool.
You just fire up the Find My iPhone app or whatever, and it's got a way that it'll deactivate those cards from being used on your phone.
Yeah.
Which I think is something that is a very good move for Apple to do.
So the other thing from the announcement was that they killed the iPod Classic, which was expected. They hadn't updated for a while, and they probably weren't selling it. No mention of Yosemite, like we said, and new iCloud pricing. 20 gigs for 99 cents a month. But you still get your free 5 gigs. And
only 5 gigabytes for free.
Listen, you know what? I have no problem with that. 20 gigs.
Really?
20 gigs for 99 cents for $12 a year? It's not bad.
I do.
Okay, so tell me.
They need to offer at least 10 gigs for free. 10 to 15 gigs for free. Basically, Microsoft and Google both do that. You can easily get about 10 gigs for free from either service. And especially if you have multiple Apple devices and you have it all tied to one iCloud account. So you got one iCloud account with 5 gigabytes for multiple Apple devices.
Yeah. Okay. So you're right there. Yeah. How much do you have stored on your iCloud right now?
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. I'd have to go look. I'm sure I'm using all of it with the size of backups. If you put it back up in the cloud, it's using all 5 gigabytes of it.
Yeah.
And that's just the backup from my phone. If you want to back up also your iPad and your MacBook Air to back all that up to iCloud, you really need 15 gigabytes. You need 5 gigabytes per device. If you have multiple devices, you should be allowed 5 gigabytes per device.
Yeah, I guess you're right. There. New Windows 9 leaks, John. New screenshots have come out. And
because the other ones were fake, according to Paul Thurrott.
And they were fake. He was right. He was absolutely right. They were fake. WinSuperside.com has a video, actually, of the leak screenshots.
And that video just came out today, I believe.
Yeah, so if you go to WinSuperside.com...
This is all leaked. Yeah, this is all leaked on German blogs, by the way.
So as you can see, the power button is up top. Your applications... People are disliking this. I don't hate it. I don't know why people hate this thing. Why? Tell me why.
I think the leaked version kind of looked better. I like that it actually had a bigger button at the bottom that said shutdown. I would prefer that over an actual button with just a symbol on it. And the color separation of the actual start menu versus the modern UI part of it, I liked that separation. I'm not a huge fan of that scroll bar there.
Yeah. The scroll bar is a little weird there. But listen,
it feels a little bit too of the modern UI and not enough of the traditional desktop that I prefer.
I personally like it. I have no problem with this. I have no problem whatsoever with this. But again, why don't we wait? Let's wait and use it. You know, let's see how it is until we use it.
I mean, look, this is something that Paul Thurrott and everybody else said this is what they should have done from day one with Windows 8. They should have been able to integrate this modern UI with the desktop UI so that you had that hybrid start menu where it had the modern UI plus the traditional start menu. But then you could also have floating windows of modern UI applications. Instead of having to go into this full screen modern UI interface, you could have those modern UI apps right on your desktop like a traditional desktop app.
What do you think the reaction... Now, the beta's coming out at the end of the month. What do you think that the reaction is going to be from people when it gets released?
I think it's going to be more positive, to be honest. I really do. I think, and I don't know if that's because more people have been warmed up to the idea of the way that Windows 8 looks and feels. But I think they've also made a lot of effort into undoing stuff that they did to piss off desktop users like myself.
Yeah.
I see that they have made a lot of effort in that area. There was a lot of things in Windows 8 as a desktop user that made me not want to use it at all. And now I'm seeing that, you know what? Windows 9 might be something that I could live with. I mean, there's stuff in Windows 8 that I would love to use, and I see that there's benefits to Windows 8, but overall, in terms of the way that I produce using my desktop, it's not necessarily conducive with the way that Windows 8 is laid out for me.
I like the floating Metro apps.
Yeah.
You know,
And what I love the fact is that they got rid of the charm bar. There's not a charm bar on the desktop anymore. Instead, you have a button in the title bar of the application now, which I think is much better and more akin to, having that little file toolbar.
Yeah. I'm excited about this. So the tentative date is September 30th for the public beta that's going to be out. And
I don't know if I'm going to do the beta, but
I'm going to do it because
try the final version.
I'm going to do the beta, and because I have extra machines to put it on. But I'm going to do the beta because a lot of the key features that are going to be in Windows 9 were supposed to be in Update 2. They're complete changes. They're not buggy changes. So they've been working on this for some time now, and it seems pretty stable. And from what I've heard, a lot of these key features are going to be stable, like the virtual desktop, something that Apple has had for a long time. Microsoft has not put on a previous version of their. I'm not talking about enterprise. I'm talking about regular Windows because they thought the consumer would be confused by it. I'm excited about that. I think that works out for a lot of people.
That's one of the things that I think they are. Yes, they've had that in some versions of Windows before, but I think that's something that people that are actually wanting to use desktops for workstations and whatnot would find virtual desktops useful.
So, John, why don't you go into a story? I've hogged the beginning of the show with the story selection. So why don't you pick something?
That means I actually have to look at my notes.
I think you have to look at your notes now. I think that's how I get you.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about this story that a lot of people kind of want us to talk about, and that's that PayPal and Coinbase are partnering to enable Bitcoin payments. A lot of people are talking about Bitcoins and, just everything involved with Bitcoins. Like everything should support Bitcoin. Well, it looks like PayPal might actually support Bitcoin in the future. They teamed up with a company that they acquired earlier last year called Braintree. And their CEO Bill Reddy announced at Disrupt that customers with the PayPal app will have access to mobile payments through their One Touch application. And they also say that PayPal is partnering with Coinbase to enable a Bitcoin-based payment system. This would be PayPal's first foray into Bitcoin, he said, but it's going to be via the Braintree platform, which is interesting because this Braintree, I keep saying that wrong. Braintree platform is not necessarily an application, but a service that's enabled in applications. You can have an application that builds all this into the application itself so that you have your PayPal login. Then you can also use that in multiple applications.
That's not bad. I don't know. Listen, I'm not a big fan of Bitcoin. I understand some people love it. I understand there's a huge community around it and huge supporters, but I don't know. It's not stable enough for me to even consider using. And what am I going to buy
that's
with
kind of
it?
why. Yeah, I mean that's kind of why I'm a little bit surprised that this is what PayPal is doing, because PayPal is one of those companies that is kind of notorious for shutting down people's accounts simply because they don't like the activity that they're doing with their PayPal account.
Oh yeah.
There are people that run companies that have had their PayPal account shut down, and they cannot access their money in that PayPal account anymore, and they just completely lose whatever they have in that PayPal account. So for PayPal to actually be willing to accept Bitcoin, which in my opinion is more associated with seedier parts of the internet and seedier things that might not necessarily be legal. So for them to being open to the idea of Bitcoins, that strikes me as a little bit odd, because that's not necessarily something that PayPal has been keen on lately.
Yeah, I'm curious about this. PayPal also recently changed their entire UI, and they've really made it into their dashboard almost looks like a banking website. So they're really trying to kind of take that market. I know a lot of people, they don't have a bank account. They don't have a bank account, John. They have PayPal. They have a PayPal card, and they don't buy anything cash. They don't need cash. They just use their PayPal card.
PayPal made some changes recently. I think it was PayPal recently. I can't remember. It was either PayPal or PNC. They got rid of their mobile checking, where you could take a photo of a check and they would cash it for you.
Yeah, Citibank just added that. I have that on my Citibank now.
Some people add it, some people take it away. And I think it was PayPal that took that option away so that you can't actually cash checks virtually anymore.
You know, my
Which I
problem
think
with
is a
that
big
is
loss.
the from what I know, it's not like you can't cash a big check with that. Like, I think it's like under $1,000 you could do.
Yeah.
If
and
your
it
check
takes like 7 days.
does it really?
Yeah.
It takes long. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it takes up to 7 days for it.
I wonder if it's like that on Citibank because they just introduced that
It's
feature.
up that on every single service that does any sort of virtual checking.
Huh. Well, that sucks. Well, that's good to know because
that's why I only used it the one time. I'm like, 7 days, really? I can just walk up to my bank the same day and have it deposited.
Virtual check. So my wife actually uses this, but I'm trying to see mobile check deposits on Citibank. Let's see what the limit on this is. Mobile check deposit is free service. Oh, thank you. My intern brought coffee. I'm trying to see what the limit is. Not saying it here, but I'm sure Comb just told me it's under 5,000, which if that's the case, then that's great. That's phenomenal. But I'm not too sure what it is on this carrier. But, I mean, listen, everything is digital now. Everything is, fast-paced. Nobody wants to go to a bank and deposit money. Hate it.
I agree. I mean, it's very convenient to simply take a picture of the check and have it deposited. The problem that I have with it is that it takes 7 days for that money to show up in your account.
Yeah. A couple more stories before we go into our picks of the week. Microsoft is reportedly omitting Nokia brand on future devices. This is something that has been reported for a while now, that the Nokia brand was going to be killed off slowly and it was just going to be Lumia. Well, it's starting to happen. They're saying that the report states that the Lumia 830 and the 730 will be the last two handsets that feature a Nokia logo. After that, they are all going to Windows. Windows Phone.
By the way, they're also omitting the phone part.
Just Windows?
It looks like they might also just be calling it Windows from now on.
But what kind of Windows?
Just Windows.
It's so funny.
They're actually keeping the Lumia. It's going to be like the Windows Lumia 930 or whatever.
I like the Lumia name. I really do. I think the Lumia name is great. That's a phenomenal line. It represents what it is. You know exactly what Lumia is.
I mean, HTC, the M8 already does this. They already just call it Windows. They don't call it Windows Phone.
Well, they call it the HTC One M8 for Windows.
Right. They don't say Windows Phone.
No, but I mean that's a silly name too. Enough with these silly names. Like I don't know what, like the HTC One.
I don't know what the M8 is. What the heck is an M8?
And why is the M8? I mean, there's multiple M8s.
Lumia 830, I can understand. You have that Lumia, and then you have some sort of numbering system.
Yeah, but their numbering
that
system
I
is whacked out too.
M8, I don't know what an HTC One M8 is.
By the way, that's a great phone. Great phone. I'm very surprised how good that phone is.
HTC has always had horrible names for their phones.
Yeah, well, we'll see. All right, John. Time for the picks of the week. This is a portion of the show where we pick a tech device, a website, anything that comes to mind that we liked. We even picked podcasts. John picked the podcast a couple of weeks ago. And John has a really good pick this week, and I also have a really good pick this week. So, John, why don't you go first?
So my pick this week is a program called ScanSpeeder. I've been doing a big project now for a little over a month where I'm taking all my photographs, every physical photograph that I have, and there's thousands of them. I probably have, 4,000 or 5,000 photos, and I have a scanner, a flatbed scanner that I've been scanning these photos with. But this program, ScanSpeeder, makes it so easy to scan these photos and archive them because you can put multiple photos on your flatbed. I can fit some of them up to 5 photos on my flatbed scanner here. Scan all 5 photos at once, and then this program, ScanSpeeder, will actually see all those photos and crop and separate each photo into its separate photo. Instead of it being one giant scanned photo, you can separate it out. Not only that, but you can actually add your own caption and send it to Facebook. You can link it to your Facebook account, and as you scan and tag it, send it directly to Facebook.
Oh, so this is actually cool. So you put multiple images in there. So you could put, let's say, let's say you put 2, 4, 6 images. and it'll separate the 6 images into individual
How
images.
many ever photos you can fit on your flatbed scanner?
That's great.
It doesn't work 100% of the time. There are a couple issues with it, but for the most part, it works very well. You can save both TIFF and JPEG at the same time. I'm actually, because I'm going back and actually doing photo correction to them, I'm just doing TIFF so that when I do generate the JPEG quality, I have both the same color corrected versions. But there's also a couple of issues. One of the issues that I've found is that it doesn't necessarily, when you scan at a higher resolution than you're capable of in the application using their Twain driver, it doesn't necessarily report back the correct DPI that you're scanning at.
Okay.
I'm also having issues at higher resolutions. I was scanning at 600 and 800 DPI for some photos, but other photos I was scanning at 1200 DPI. And it seems like when I scan at 1200 DPI, larger photos that are like several thousand pixels big no longer have the ability to save. They end up either saving and it becomes corrupt, or it just doesn't save at all and throws a generic Windows GDI error.
Ooh, boy.
Like, what the heck is that? But for the most part, if you're scanning at 600 DPI for photos, you're going to be able to do this very quickly. I've got about 1,800 photos that I did this way at 600 DPI using ScanSpeeder, and it was so much easier than using my software that came with the scanner itself, because it automatically put the borders around and separated each photo for me instead of me having to open up Photoshop and figuring out, okay, I have 3 photos here. I need to, crop and make images for each one of these.
Very cool. Very cool.
So if you want to check it out, go to scanspeeder.com. It is a paid program. It's about $30. But if you're scanning a lot of photos, over 1,000 of them, this is something that definitely is very useful to have. They have a free trial if you want to try it. It does, I think, 10 saves. If you want to try it out for 10 photos, you can do that as well.
Very cool. My pick of the week this week is a phone that I've been using for about a month now. It is the OnePlus One, the flagship killer. It's an invite-only phone, so I got an invite a couple months ago by a friend of John's, and I ordered it immediately. I wanted to get it because I really was curious on what this company's going to do. It's not a major brand, but they were gloating that this is the Android phone to have. If you want an Android phone, this is the best experience you're going to get. It's running CyanogenMod. It's a special version of Cyanogen for this phone. And the thing about this was that you're going to be able to tweak everything you want to tweak. You're going to be able to change the theme. It's a big phone. It's a 5.5-inch phone, and it's unsubsidized. So it starts at $299 for the beginning, I guess, the 32 gig model, and I have the 64 gig. I paid $399 for mine, or $349 for mine. I have to tell you, this is the best Android phone I've ever used. This phone is phenomenal. The display is stunning. The camera is solid. It's a great camera. They are constantly updating it. Initially, there were some bugs with it, and they were really quick to fixing the bugs. The battery life is unbelievable. I haven't charged this thing in about 2 days. I'm at 88% right now. It's just a phenomenal phone. Now, the cool thing is, a lot of people get bored with their phone. They have a theme showcase where you could buy themes, and there are people making all these cool themes for this thing, and it totally gives you a different experience every time you update the theme, depending on what you get. I have like 6 or 7 themes that I constantly go through on this thing. It's just a phenomenal phone. I absolutely love the phone. Unfortunately, it's an invite-only phone. There are no invites that I have currently, but if you go online, you can find some invites. If you go to their forum on oneplus.net, they have a message board there. People are giving away invites all the time. I just a really impressive phone, and I have to tell you, out of all the Android phones that I've used over the last couple of years, this single-handedly is the best phone that I have used. My brother got an LG G3, which I was actually impressed by, but if I were to pick one of these, it would be this. This is only available on AT&T and T-Mobile. It's not available on Verizon and Sprint. But if you have AT&T and T-Mobile, what I did with this, I actually got the pay-as-you-go plan for AT&T, and I'm about to swap it out for the T-Mobile prepaid, because the T-Mobile prepaid is like $30, and you get like 100 minutes instead of having 500 minutes and free text and whatever. But I'm about to swap it out for T-Mobile to the SIM and just use that, because I'm really not using any minutes. I'm just using, the data on this thing. Great phone. Yeah. I'm really impressed. The hardware too, guys, really well built. OnePlus OnePlus.net is the website. 1+1 is the phone. You guys should really check it out. If you're looking for an Android phone, you have AT&T and T-Mobile, consider this one. That's my pick of the week.
It's a really pretty device.
It really is. They did a great job with this, and it's really thin too. Like, you know what it is about this? A lot of the stuff that you need an app for, they've built in to the ROM. Like, they have a screencast, so you could actually record your screen. So if I'm demoing an app, for example, I could record it and then just play it on the air, which I think is pretty useful. The other thing that you could tweak the CPU, you could overclock it. I'm just going to go into the settings now to see what features they have. I haven't looked. They have a lot of customization with the home screen, the lock screen, the status bar. That's totally customizable. The gestures are totally customizable. The notification drawer is customizable. So, like, you could even change the buttons. You could change the display setting. You could change the apps, how the apps are. There's nothing preloaded. I mean, it's a really pure... It's actually better than a pure Google experience because you're getting a lot of useful stuff on this thing. You could have multiple profiles. You could... You know, it's just very well done. Very, very well done. And I'm really impressed by things, and I'm pretty impressed by this, so it says a lot. All right, guys, go to our website, gfknetwork.com. If you miss any portion of the show, of course, you can catch it there. We're everywhere podcasts are available. We're on YouTube. We're on Daily Motion. Also, if you want to support us, you want to help us out, every time you make a purchase on Amazon, use our little affiliate link. You go to gfq.co/Amazon. That's gfq.co/Amazon. And bookmark it. So you may not need to buy anything right now, but if you need to buy something tomorrow or the following day, you know what? We got a tiny little credit from the purchase, and it helps us out do upgrades because the new year's here, and we're going to be changing up the studio again. Anything else, John? Patreon campaign. If you want to give us a couple bucks, you give us a quarter, you give us 10 cents, 15 cents, whatever you want to give. You could go to patreon.com/whatthetech. That's patreon.com/whatthetech. If everybody now watching, there's about 60 people in our chat room, everybody gave 25 cents a month, that would kind of build up. That'd be a couple bucks there. So we accept everything, and they do the processing, and they bill you, I think, once a month for whatever you charge. So it's phenomenal, actually. We have over $500 in donations a week coming in from that. Patreon.com/whatthetech. You can follow Suncast on Twitter, @Suncast. I'm on Twitter, @Andrew Zarian, of course, @GFK Network. And that's it, guys. If you're watching live, Free For All is live at 8 p.m. East. If you're not watching live, then disregard that portion. See you all next week.